Hey everyone, it's Mr. Lynn. Today is the 18th day of the quarantine. I think it's Tuesday. I'm losing track. Anyhow, today's video is specifically for the string players. Now, other musicians, you might want to check it. You're probably going to learn a thing or two, but today I wanted to dedicate just to the strings. So I did a video interview with Alisson Gillespie. She's an absolute strings guru. She's in the band Blackwater. She does the Celtic fiddle seminars that we've done before in the past. So she's got a lot of great information for string players on how to properly take care of your instrument, how to practice, some practice techniques, some book ideas for you to work out of. So it's kind of a longer interview, but I strongly recommend you watch it, and you're going to learn something. So that's it for today. Hope you enjoy, and I'll see you tomorrow. So I am here with violin guru Alisson Gillespie, and I thought we would do a episode just for the strings. So let's start with, do you have any suggestions for our string students about instrument care, cleaning their instrument, cleaning the rosin off, bow care, anything like that?
Absolutely. So one of the issues I think that's going on right now is that many students don't feel completely confident tuning their own instruments. They kind of rely on their teachers to tune their instruments, but that really can't happen right now. So I want to talk about tuning a little bit. Fortunately, the violin only has 4 strings that you have to worry about. There are really 2 tools that you need to tune well. One is some kind of an app, which you can either bring up on the internet on your computer, or a free app that you load onto your phone that will assist you with tuning. And the main way that it assists you is that it will actually sound the tone for each string. So it'll sound an A, and you can listen to that and compare, and then E and D and G. Okay, so and then so I suggest that you start by plucking your string, listening to the tone that's sounding, and then adjusting the string to get as close as you can. It's not going to be exact, but to get as close as you can. You want to get into the ballpark. Okay, so there are 2 ways basically on the violin that you tune. One is with your fine tuners, one is with your pegs. Most people are pretty good with their fine tuners, but they're afraid of the pegs, okay? The trouble with the fine tuners is you are limited in how much you can adjust the string. If your string is really out of tune, the fine tuner just isn't going to do the job. And sometimes what happens is students overuse the fine tuner so that they're screwed all the way in, and then they have nowhere to go. They have no choice but to unscrew the fine tuner and start over. And if you screw in too far, then the fine tuner ends up coming down, hitting the top of your violin and causing a buzz. Okay, so you check what that looks like and make sure, because if these are they're screwed in too tightly, I don't know if you can see that on the screen here, but that brings the tuner down and it ends up touching the violin. Now you've got a problem. So if you have a weird buzz going on, that's an obvious thing to check. Okay, and you have to unscrew the tuner. So how not to be afraid of using your pegs. Okay? So the first thing that's important is follow the string up and make sure that you see the peg. It's actually the string is wound around, because a common mistake is to start moving the wrong peg. The string isn't changing. You're thinking, what's going on? You move it more and more, and what happens next? You probably break a string, okay? This is what everybody's so fearful of. So just follow the string up, make sure that you have the right peg, okay? A lot of times, pegs will be stuck. The student can't move the peg, and they're trying to tighten. They know that the string is flat. They know that they need to tighten it, but the peg is not budging, okay? What you need to do in that case is you actually need to go the opposite direction. You need to loosen it first, okay? Because it will almost always move down, okay? So loosen it first and make sure again that you see if the string's wound around the peg, you're loosening it this way. You loosen the peg first. Then, and of course that'll make the string flatter, then listen to your tone again, your pitch, okay? Pluck your string, mine's totally loose now, and then push it in and move it a little bit. Check it again. It's always better to go by little degrees than to much. This is the safer practice, okay? And you just keep going up and keep listening to that pitch until you're close, okay? And you do that one at a time with each of the pegs. Sometimes if a string is really out of tune, in the process of bringing it back up to pitch, it might throw another string out. So sometimes you have to go back and forth across those 4 strings several times until it settles in, okay? But really nothing terrible can happen if you just go by little degrees. And remember that some people have mechanical pegs. So they're more like a guitar and they'll just stay wherever you leave them. But the majority of students will have a traditional violin with traditional tension pegs, which means that as you tighten tighten the string to bring up the pitch, you need to just push in a little bit so that it holds, okay? And that's the idea. And if you just go gently and carefully and gradually, nothing terrible can happen. The other thing is that I advise students to explore online tuning self-help videos.
Okay.
Watched a video several times. They'll talk you through it, and that's a good way. And now's the time, if you've never developed the confidence to tune your own instrument, now's a good time to do that, okay? Then you are completely self-sufficient. So that's my advice there. Then after you've got the strings pretty much in the ballpark, then you can go down and you can do it again, listening to the pitches and adjusting with the fine tuner. And then the final step is going to be tuning using the sound of your fifths, because each string, the interval from a G to a D, D to an A D is a fifth, okay? And it's an interval that's very pleasing to our ear. So you start with your A, you're not going to adjust your A, whatever A you have, A you're going with, and then, see, that doesn't sound so good to me, so I'm going to go. Okay, this is a little hard for some people, so this is also something to practice. Bringing your arm and hand up here, out of the way of the bow. Then you have to think to yourself, which way do I move counterclockwise to sharpen or flatten the string? And then if you can play the 2 strings together, you can really hear then and judge whether you need to go sharper or flatter with the string that you're adjusting. Sometimes it's hard to tell. Sometimes you're a little bit out of tune. You can't quite tell. I know it's not quite right, but I don't know whether I need to sharpen the D string to match my A or flatten it. Choose one direction and go very gradually, and it should become very apparent whether it's getting worse or better. And if you've chosen the wrong direction, start going back in the other direction, okay? So it's a process, but it's, it's something that becomes very automatic the more you do it. So it shouldn't be avoided. Okay, so every string player should know that at all times they should have a backup set of strings, okay? But sometimes we forget, okay? When I change my strings, if the string isn't broken, I set those aside, I mark it as used. That way, if I break a string down the line and I don't have a backup new string, at least I have an old one to put on until I can order one or get to a music store to get another new one. Okay, but don't forget, it's like putting a bad, you don't want to be caught. Okay.
So that brings up a good question. How will the students know my string needs to be changed? Is it a certain amount of time or something you're listening for?
Yeah. Well, mostly it's a function of how much you play. I mean, the more you play, the faster you'll use up your strings. What happens with most strings is that they just go dead over time. And sometimes I'm appalled because I'll say to a student, when was the last time you changed your strings? They'll say, I don't know, maybe 3 years ago, So a good rule of thumb for a student is change their strings every 6 months, okay? New set of strings. I'll talk about that. But you can look for signs of wear by seeing a lot of times up here in the scroll area, it will start fraying a little bit. And though your string is wound and you'll see the winding sort of start to separate. So that's a sign that your string is under a lot of stress and it needs to be changed. And if you don't change it, it could snap, right? And also you'll see that a lot in this area. You'll see fraying here and that. So those are two things. And you should just keep an eye on your strings. Just check them from time to time and see how they look. If sometimes they'll get little burrs on them, okay?
Mm-hmm.
You'll actually feel that when you're playing, you'll feel that burr. That's a sign that the string is going. When I have students put on new strings, even if they're not showing signs of wear, but to me, they're sounding dead, and then we change the strings, and all of a sudden the student will say, like, that's like a brand new. It really makes a huge difference. You just don't notice it because it happens gradually. Then you put a new set of strings on. All of a sudden, well, they take a few days to settle in, but then it just sounds beautiful. The difference is dramatic. So, and I think that when your violin sounds better, you're going to get more enjoyment out of playing it, and you're going to be more apt to practice. So, yeah. And keep in mind, though, that the A and the E strings are the two strings we play on more than the D and the G. So they might wear out faster. So sometimes when I order strings, I'll order an extra set, but then you can order strings individually too, or buy them at a music shop. So buy a couple of extra A's and E's, and then you're set, okay? One thing to check for is that some strings have what we call a ball end, and some strings have a loop end. So you just want to see what your violin is set up for and make sure that you are ordering or buying the right thing, okay? Some strings are recommended for use with fine tuners, and some strings are not recommended for use with fine tuners. So that's another thing to check into. And there are a lot of strings out there, a lot more different choices than even 5 years ago. A good all-round string is the Dominance by Dr. Tomastik, but there certainly are many good choices, and sometimes strings will sound different on different violins. So sometimes it's just kind of a little bit of an experimentation to see what you like, okay? So string changing is another thing that people are afraid of, and that would be a whole nother video. But I just want to say again that if you are in the position where you have to change the string, again, go online, watch a video, watch it several times, okay? Never, ever, if you decide to change all your strings, never, ever take all your strings off at once. Okay, this is something that because the bridge is held here by tension. Okay, so as soon as you release all the tension across the board, the bridge will collapse. When the bridge collapses, the sound post inside can collapse. Okay, and then you need to take it to a music shop to get that all put back together. It's not broken, it just needs to be back together by an expert. So if you're going to change your strings, I usually recommend this is all at once. I would change maybe the A, and I wouldn't even necessarily do it all on the same day, because that can be pretty frustrating, because it takes about a week for a new string to settle in on a violin.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And that also is a function of how much you play during that time. And I always say, if you change your string, even if you don't get to practice the next day, keep tuning your violin, keep tuning it. The more you tune it, the faster it'll settle in. But it can take a week for a new string to settle in on a violin. So I recommend, if you're going to change all your strings, change them over the course of a week. Change your A, or whichever one is more desperate, okay? Then the next day or 2 days later, change your G. Okay, I'm just kind of spreading out the tension here. Then do the D, and then do the E. When you bring a string up from being completely slack to being in tune, it can pull the bridge, okay? So you want to be careful to watch for that and just bring it up gradually. If you bring it up too fast, it's kind of like a balloon that you blow up too fast. It's more likely to break. Just keep bringing it up gradually until you are at pitch, and expect that it will go out of tune a lot over the next few days. And that's why I say do one at a time. Do it over the course of a week. Okay. So that's what I have to say about strings. Yeah. Okay. And then we covered tuning also.
What about the bow and rosin?
Okay. So the bow and rosin. Sometimes students rosin too aggressively, and there's just too much rosin there, and it's kind of flying around when they're playing, and it's really building up on the surface here. And if that's happening, maybe you're rosining too much. By the same token, some students just forget about rosin, or they lost their rosin, or they broke their rosin, and they think, I don't really need that rosin. And after a while, the violin stops making a noise, okay? Because you need that rosin to help the bow grab the string and make the sound, okay? So too much rosin can make the sound that you produce a little fuzzy and unclear, and also just really cake up too much on the instrument. Not enough rosin will cause your bow to slip. If you're getting a lot of this when you're trying to play, that kind of thing, it's just not, you know, or it just isn't making enough sound, then you need more rosin, okay? So it's hard to say exactly how often you rosin, but you might want to try every other time. Then again, if you're going straight from a practice at high school to some community orchestra and you're playing like 3 hours in one day, you're definitely going to need to rosin during that time. So now rosin also deteriorates over time. So it has a shelf life of about 6 months. And after that, its properties change and it oxidizes. So you need to also change your rosin at about the time that you're changing your strings.
Oh, okay. Interesting. I never heard that before.
Yeah. So old rosin just will not work well. If a lot of students will, rosin smashes if you drop it on a hard surface. And so a lot of times students are trying to deal with these little pieces of rosin or anything, and then they have that in their case. That's kind of bad news, because it's very sticky. Everybody knows that. And the rosin gets all over your instrument, all over the inside of your case. And it's very, very difficult to deal with. So you really, once you break your rosin, you really don't want to put it back in your case. So the bow, everybody should be remembering to untighten their bow every time they put it away, but not too much. We don't want the hair so slack that they're going to catch on things and break. So as a good rule of thumb, I usually say 5 turns to the left, 5 turns to the right to tighten, okay? Sometimes students over tighten their bow. That's very bad for the bow. So it's called a bow because the original violin bows were actually shaped like this, like a bow and arrow. And we still want to have that. We still want to see, okay, that bow in our violin bow. So that means that I would say that if you can put your pinky in here, that's good.
You lift that up a little higher. Can't quite.
Sure. If you can put your pinky in there, yeah. That's good. And then there should be more space here and here, okay? If you over tighten your bow, it takes away that, and then you really can't bow as effectively when you're playing, and also it shortens the life of the bow. It just puts too much tension on it. By the same token, if your bow is too slack, you can't really get much control and you can't get much volume in your playing. So we don't want any loose hairs, but we don't want it to be any more than about that tightness in the middle, okay? When you rosin, make sure you rosin all the way to the ends. A lot of times students will just rosin in the middle, but they forget to rosin here and here. So if you don't rosin there and there, you won't be able to utilize all of your bow effectively. Also, what happens is when it doesn't get rosined, it starts to get black down here, okay? And then after a while, you can't play. No matter how much you rosin down there, it just won't work down there. So effectively, what you're doing is you're kind of shortening your bow use, So make sure you rosin down there, all the way up there, several turns back and forth. And then make sure that when you're bowing, you're really using all of your bow, really utilizing your bow. The bow is as long as it can possibly be based on the average length of our arm, okay? If it's longer, it would be, because there are times when the more bow you use, the bigger the volume, the more effective you can be with your dynamics. So that's what I have to say about the bow. Very protective of the tip of the bow. That often gets broken, okay? So be very protective of it. And when you're not playing, keep your bow protected like this. This is the best way. When you're not playing, keep your violin like this. You don't want your arm on the bridge. You want your arm under here. And I always just hook my bow here and keep it down. Bows can be dangerous. People can be poked in the eyes and all sorts of things, but they can also very easily get broken, more easily than your violin. So yeah, so just loosen and tighten your bow, rosin it. But let me just say something about this. Every time after I play, I wipe down my violin. Some kids have said to me, oh, it's cool to have a lot of rosin caked up on your, yeah, no, not really. Okay. So every time, so I have, this is a cloth that a lot of violin stores music stores will sell, or you can buy them online. There's several different types, but I always take my bow before I loosen it. And I take a little piece like this and I run it along in there because rosin builds up in here. Okay. So I'll do that a couple times. And then I'll also take a different section. I'll rub the strings down like that. And then I'll also run it through underneath here. Rosin will build up on your violin and it kind of pits the varnish and spoils it. So it's really not something that, you know, from the point of view of taking care of your instrument, you want to do this, okay? But also, when rosin cakes up on strings, it results in a very sort of unclear, scratchier, harsh sound. So sometimes when students say, my violin doesn't sound good anymore, you know, well, that might be one of the reasons, because you haven't been, you know, keeping up with cleaning it and that sort of thing. And it can, and you don't, you know, the violin is, the strings are surface and they grab that rosin, and after a while, it just gets completely caked. So keep cleaning your strings. By the way, there's, you can order a violin cleaning kit. And that's always fun. See this fun device here? Look at what I can do with this. I can go like this underneath here. It's very designed to get those hard to reach spaces. Okay.
That's great.
And then on the other side is a little brush. So then I can brush around. I can brush in the scroll and get all the other little parts, you know. And then if I'm really, you know, feeling in love with my violin today, I can buy some approved violin varnish cleaner, only, you know, sold specifically for this purpose. And I can get a different rag and I can polish up my violin so it's all pretty, and that's a nice thing to do. Okay. I have a couple other little things to show you.
Great.
We talked before about sometimes how a peg gets absolutely stuck. Now this happens more during the summer than the winter, because this is kind of a living, breathing thing. It's made of wood, and wood reacts to temperature and humidity. So in the summertime, the wood swells, okay? And that's the time when you get the pegs really stuck. Winter, usually have the opposite problem where they slip, you know, and you have to stick them back in. So if you are having, you know, you're just having a terrible problem with your peg and it's getting stuck all the time, like I said, loosen it first, and then you can put a little bit of peg compound on it. Okay, it's like, looks like a little crayon. Don't do too much though. Don't be too liberal with it. Just a little bit. You take the peg out, you kind of go like this around the peg, and then you put it back in. And sometimes that solves the problem. Okay. Also, in regards to tuning, do you see this right here? This is a great little device, very inexpensive, under $20. D'Addario is the company that sells them. It's a micro tuner. So you see how I have it on my violin? It's on all the time. I don't have to take it off. I can put my violin away in the case and it's always there, okay? So after I've done that whole process where I feel like my strings are pretty close in tune and I'm just kind of doing the last bit of like really fine tuning, I can turn this on and it will tell me what I need to do to get my strings absolutely perfect. But another really good use for that is that when I'm playing something, like say I'm working in a position, like a third position or something, and I'm not very comfortable with third position, I'm not really sure if I'm playing in tune in third position, I can put that on, and as I play, I can look at it and it will tell me how to adjust my fingers, okay? So that's a great little device to have for all students to have, okay? It's not the only thing you need for tuning because, of course, you have to hear that pitch that you're trying to match, but it's a very, very useful thing to have and a great invention. So those have gotten smaller and smaller to the point now where they can just stay on your instrument and you don't have to worry about it. There's lots of great rosins out there, but if you feel like, this is a very nice one that I often use. Here, Gustav Bernandel. Okay, here's another thing. Sometimes we are playing outside in hot conditions, or sometimes we just perspire a lot because we kind of wear the violin, okay? Yeah. The viola, we're wearing this instrument, okay? So one thing that I do is if I feel like I'm often perspiring here, I'll just use a bandana, fold it up, and that kind of protects it, and and it's like a little barrier, and that is a nice solution for that. I must say also that I always recommend having a fingernail clipper in your case. This is because you must have short nails to play this instrument properly. Girls, with your, I know getting your nails done is a very big thing these days. And I really struggle with students around prom time because they spend money on these nails. I'm like, how do you expect to play like that? The fact is you just cannot play properly. If you're trying to play with long nails, you're going to completely be changing your finger position and playing with like that part of your finger. It's going to throw your intonation off. It just does not work. Okay. Keep a fingernail clipper in your case because sometimes some people, their nails grow very, very quickly. And all of a sudden the difference between yesterday and today, it can happen to me. I get to a gig, I'm about to start playing, I'm warming up. I'm like, oh, my nails, I have my clipper right there. Okay. So that's a really good thing to have in your case at all times because it's so important to be playing on your fingertips. Okay. Yeah. And not the sides of your fingers. You can't possibly do that. You can't do vibrato. Okay. It's just not going to work. Okay. There's just
not going to get good double stops.
No, not good double stops. Nothing that's going to work the way it's supposed to if you have long nails. And it's just no way around it. And you have to make a choice. You have to make a choice between long nails and playing a string instrument. No way around it. Okay. Also, if you play with nails that are too long, what's going to happen is you're going to, the grooves are going to form, like, dents and grooves are going to form your fingerboard. So that's not good either. All right. So let's see. I'm just trying to think of what else I would like to talk about. So we talked about cleaning, humidifying your instrument.
I was just about to say, I was going to say, I see a lot of people have the nicer cases that have that built-in,
hydrometer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that will tell you if you need to humidify your instrument, but if you're not paying attention to that and you're not doing anything about, then it's just, jewelry in your case, but that's a handy thing. So over the years, there have been a lot of different methods for humidifying your case, and humidifying your case is most important in the winter months when we have, when the heating systems are on in buildings and in our houses. And what happens is that it really dries out the instrument, and that's when cracks can form. And also part of your instrument is glued together, and then the glue also dries out and cracks, and then you might be in for an expensive repair. So the latest thing to come on the market in the past few years is this. Can you see that okay?
It's a little dark.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a little Boveda, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, and it's got a little pack inside of it. And it just simply sits in your case underneath the neck of your violin. Okay. And the great thing about this is that you don't have to do anything to it. You put it in your case. You keep your case closed at all times. So if you open up your case to practice, close your case while you're practicing. Okay. It controls the humidity inside your violin case. It goes both ways. If you don't have enough humidity, it releases moisture into the case. If you have too much humidity, it takes it up. Okay. So it's really great because you just put it in there, although it lasts about 4 months. So then you need to get a replacement. Okay. But they're not expensive. This was originally developed by cigar makers to keep cigars toothbrush, okay? And then it was modified to be able to be used in the case. And I just slip it in there under the neck of the violin, and it takes care of it. And it's really the best method right now on the market, okay? So that's
Nice.
Beta, okay? The music shops sell them, those that cater to string instruments, and you can order them online, okay? Getting back to cleaning the instrument, there's one little thing you can do. If you have a bow and it's got a lot of stuff caked on it, especially black kind of stuff, because if you touch your bow hairs, and you should probably try to avoid that at all times, at all costs. But if you end up, like some people pick up their bows, where did I put my bow? Some people pick up their bows like this, you know? Every time they touch the bow, there's oils in our skin, and it's getting on the hair, okay? So, and if there's too much of that, it just won't grip, the rosin won't be able to do its job. So there is something you can do, but it has to be done very carefully. You can take a clean toothbrush that's never been used. You have to say these things. And then a little tiny bit of rubbing alcohol. You can dip the toothbrush in the rubbing alcohol, and you can just go comb a little bit in that area to get that the grime off, and then dab it dry with a clean cloth after that, and then let the bow dry for 24 hours. Okay, and that's the way to clean a bow, but it has to be done like only very judiciously, very tiny little bit. Okay, so that's just a little tip. I was going to move on to some practicing techniques, but do you want?
Great.
Okay. All right.
Yes, let's jump into it.
Okay.
Did we want to start with talking more on the classical side?
I don't think it makes a whole lot of difference. I was going to say this. So I play classical violin, but I also play a lot of different fiddle styles. And those of you who are string players, this is an incredibly versatile instrument. It can be used for all different styles, not only to play classical and your orchestra music at school, but all different things. So while we're all stuck home, it could be a fun experiment for you to start listening to different violin styles. Like maybe you really like jazz, okay? Mm-hmm. Listen to some jazz violinists on YouTube, and then dig around for some sheet music for jazz violin or something. Okay, that might be fun.
There's a lot of that there. I'm a big fan of the Django Reinhardt style, that gypsy kind of jazz. Right. That's always got the violin.
It always does.
There's another group, Avalon Jazz Band, which I love, and they're always a fiddle in their stuff.
The violin figures prominently in that. There's if you have a favorite band, and I'm never up on the latest, let's just say you're a Coldplay fan, okay? You really like Coldplay. Well, there's sheet music online, downloadable for Coldplay's songs. Or maybe you're really into Lindsey Sterling, okay? Hot violinist. You can start working on some of her songs and work them up. I mean, whatever inspires you. I really like Celtic fiddle music. Mm-hmm. There are websites that will teach you this music for free. I mean, there's so many people who will just teach you through, talk you through a tune and play it for you. And if you want the sheet music, there's a great resource, www.thesession.org, and you can get almost any Celtic fiddle tune off of that site. And there are similar types of sites for bluegrass and Appalachian tunes and that sort of thing.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so there's so many resources, and just dig around, and this is a time to experiment and try playing some other types of music on this instrument, because this is an instrument you can play all your life. Okay, you are not locked into just playing with a community orchestra, although that might be what you really enjoy doing, and that's great. But there's all these other different things. I mean, I run a session for people who play Celtic music at Braveheart Pub in Hellertown on the third Sunday of each month. We're on hiatus right now during the quarantine, but we'll resume as soon as we can. And many of my students come to that session. We all sit down and play tunes together. Some of those tunes we've learned from the music, the sheet music online, but some of them we've learned by ear, and that's a great thing to do too. So I would challenge you at home, while you have some more time on your hands, to shake it up a little bit. And in addition to playing the music that you may have been assigned in school, search around for some other types of things online that you would like to learn just for your own enjoyment. Also, many of you have never tried learning something just by ear. It's actually a different process than learning from the sheet music. So start with something simple, or something that's already rolling around in your head, a song that you listen to or something, and see if you can figure it out on your instrument. You'll be amazed at what you can do. And the more you do that, the better you get at doing that. The better you get at hearing something and going, oh, I can find that on my instrument. There is a freedom in doing this, because when you can play something from memory or something that you've learned by ear, you can really focus on how you're playing it. Instead of your attention being directed all the time, first and foremost, to written music, you can pay attention to what your left hand is doing and what your bow arm is doing. And you can watch the strings, and you can just enjoy the music and play around with it. And you can go out on the porch. You can go outside. You can take that music wherever you want to go, because it's in your head and it's in your muscle memory. So that's another thing that I'd really encourage you to do. Look up a simple fiddle tune and learn it. You know, it's a great exercise, and it's a lovely thing to be able to do on whatever instrument you play. Okay. Always, if you're going to learn a tune and you've found the music to it, find somebody who's playing it. Find several people who are playing it, even people who aren't playing it on your instrument, and listen to them. Listen. The more you listen to something that you want to learn, the less work you'll have to be put into learning it.
Absolutely.
It's amazing. It's like, if you've listened to it, and I will do this, I will listen to something that I plan on learning, and I will listen to it for a week or 2 weeks. And then one day I'll sit down and say, today's the day I'm going to try to figure that out. And it's amazing. It's just there because I've listened to it so much. And if you've listened to something, you're really not going to have questions about the timing, because you're going to play it exactly the way you've heard it. And if you go to play a wrong note, you're going to know it right away, because it doesn't sound like what you've listened to. So listening should be a very important part of your practicing. And I always say that to students, you know, like, this is the first thing you should do is listen to whatever you're going to work on, if you have it to listen to. Okay. And then from there, you know, then, so here's a good sort of practicing schedule. Okay. So like anything else, warm-ups are important, because if you go to the gym and you immediately start doing some difficult move, you can hurt yourself, right? Well, you can actually hurt yourself playing an instrument if you haven't warmed up. So it's really important when you're warming up your brain, you're warming up your fingers, your hand, your arm, your wrist, all of that. You're stretching out those fingers. When you don't warm up, you will not sound as good. You will not play as well. It just doesn't go. So warm-ups are very important. When I was a kid, of course, my teacher wanted me to do scales all the time, and I hated them. You know? And it wasn't until I got to be an adult that I started loving them. Because now it feels, there are two benefits to scales. One is this beautiful way of warming up everything. So start with an easy scale, moving on to a harder scale. Do them different ways, single bows, adding slurs, different things like that. But just after you've done about 5 minutes of scales, you really are warmed up, and whatever you play next is going to sound that much better. Also, it's going to allow for your intonation to really settle down. If I'm going to be playing, say I'm going to play a piece, I really want to work on a piece today that's an F, okay? Well, the best thing I can do for myself is play an F scale. I'll play an F scale, and I'll do it several times, different ways and everything, because I really want to do a good job with my piece. And I want to get into that key. I want my brain to be in that key, you know? I play in several different bands. And sometimes what will happen in my band is that the singer will say, oh, I've got this great new song, And I'll say, okay, what key is it in? They'll say, well, the song's in B major. Yeah. And I'll think, B major? Can't you change the key? No, I really like it in B major. Okay. So what I have to immediately do is get into the frame of mind, B major, right? If I really know my scales and arpeggios, I know how to improvise around that song because I know what notes to expect. I know what chords expect in that key. So I'm ahead of the game. So that's another thing that's one of the huge benefits of scales. And it didn't dawn on me until I was at least 22. But, yeah, there's a reason why your teacher wants you to do scales. Then it's always good to have some sort of an etude or exercise book that kind of puts that scale into action in some kind of piece that maybe doesn't even particularly have a melody, but it really challenges you to think. And so it's the next step from the scale. So whatever etude or exercise, those are usually the least popular with students. So get them out of the way, do them first, okay? Then now you've done what you had to do. Now it's time to work on whatever piece you want to work on. So here's a big mistake. Here's this piece. I'm not very good at it. It's pretty new. And I'm going to play it from start to finish. Bad idea, okay? Because you're going to feel frustrated, and you're going to feel overwhelmed, and you're going to feel like you're not a very good player. This is what I say to do. Whatever you want to take little chunks, okay? You set yourself a small goal. You say, okay, this part in here always gives me trouble. Every time I go, I'm approaching it, I'm dreading it. So I'm just going to take that little part. It might be 3 or 4 measures, and I'm just going to dissect it, and I'm just going to work on it. And I'm going to drill it, and I'm going to figure it out. And then I won't dread it. When I'm there, when I get there again, I'm going to be ready for it. So I might just work on that today. I might work on 4 measures, okay? And then at the end, I'll try to plug it back into the section that those 4 measures are in, and I'll try to play that section and see if I can move into that difficult place and move out of it, okay? Then I can feel really good about myself. I did not play the whole piece today. I worked on this section. I worked on 3 lines or 4 measures or whatever, but I know I'm going to be better at that tomorrow. And tomorrow you review that again, you choose another section, and that's how you do it. You break the piece down and you build it back up again. And that's the most effective way to practice. And if you are a person that says, quite realistically, when I am doing sports and I'm doing a play and I'm doing all this stuff, I only have at best a half an hour in the day to practice, then that's what you're going to do. You're going to do your warm-ups, and then you're going to have one goal. And that's what you're going to do that day. But I guarantee at the end, you'll feel like that was a half an hour well spent than to try to play through the whole piece 3 times. It sounded lousy. I'm no good at this. And that's that. You know what I mean? Yeah. You don't achieve anything, So, and also with whatever practice time you have, divide it up. Like I said, 5 minutes on scales, let's just say 5 minutes on an etude, and then go to a piece that you know pretty well and play that. Okay. And just, tweak it a little bit, and then go to the thing that's newest to you and hardest to you, and then work on that, because by that time you're all warmed up and you're ready to tackle that. Okay. If you are new to playing, or you haven't played very much lately, or you just find that when you play, you tend to build up a lot of tension, be sure to take frequent breaks. Now, I don't mean such a long break that you walk away from it and get out of the mode of what you were doing, but just take a little break, put down the instrument, do some neck rolls, shoulder rolls, the things that are going to make a difference in playing a string instrument, this kind of thing, putting your arms behind your back, just stretch everything out, take a breath, have a drink, and start again. It can make a big difference so that tension doesn't build and build and build, because we are holding the instrument. It's a pretty strange thing to do when you think about it. We're kind of tucking it under our chin. We're using our jaw, our shoulder, our arm, all these things come into play. And this is an area where people naturally hold tension anyway. Absolutely. So if you tense day, you really didn't have a very good day, and now you're trying to practice and you don't feel like that's going well either, some really good stretches are a very good idea, just to, prevent injury and to release tension, release tension in your jaw and all that. There are some very good moves actually just in a regular yoga class. You can extract exercises from a yoga class that are particularly helpful to a string player. And so I really recommend doing those. So I have some books to suggest, like.
Great.
So again, while people have a little extra time on their hands and they're stuck at home, there's really no excuse not to practice anymore. but it can be hard to stay motivated. Mm-hmm. That's why I'm suggesting that people experiment with some different styles and see what type of music they would like to play on this instrument, and use YouTube to its fullest and
absolutely
have some fun with the instrument. Okay. So in school, if you are taking school lessons, there isn't much time to work on things like this. Okay. Vibrato. Can you see that? Okay.
It's a little high.
A little high.
There we go.
Okay. All right. This is one of the only books I know of out there that specifically deals with vibrato, and it even has a DVD if you want it. Okay. So vibrato is just a technique that takes time and patience, and you have to work at it pretty diligently. And it comes over the course of about a year. And some people, it's not something that a teacher teaching a class in a public school setting would necessarily have a chance to work with a student on, but it can make a huge difference in the quality of the sound that's produced. So I would say if you have some time off right now, maybe you want to work on your vibrato. There, again, you can find some help on YouTube, and then maybe you could order this vibrato book and work on that. It takes you through it gradually. Watch videos of people close up doing vibrato, and it's time to work on that. These are two books that are great for violin positions, okay? Maybe you just don't feel very confident in third or fifth position, but it does come up in your orchestra music. Mm-hmm. This first book deals with third and fifth position, and this one deals with second and fourth. Okay, and they lay it out in a very logical way and give you lots of exercises to do. So it might be a time to gain some confidence and get some more practice working in the upper positions. This is an exercise book that my students really tend to like. This Wolfart 60 Studies, because they sound very attractive. Like you it doesn't just sound like some weird exercise that doesn't go anywhere. It's rewarding to get to play the etude. They're very well composed, if you will. This is another book that I use extensively, especially for my fiddle students. Can you see that okay?
No, it's out of focus. There, we got it. Melodious Double Stops.
Yes, by Josephine Trott. These are just great. Okay, these are short. They start out as short. They get longer as you go along. But they're little double stop exercises. And a lot of kids are kind of afraid of double stops. They're going along, they get to double stops, and they freak out, So the more you look at double stops, the better you get at reading them, because sometimes they can be confusing. You misread what the note is because they're on top of each other. So the more you do these, the more comfortable you get at reading the double stops. But double stops are just such a great thing, because first of all, double stops added into any kind of a fiddle tune, or even just a slow song that you like to play, can just make it sound that much fuller and more beautiful. And then also, when you're playing double stops, it's much easier to hear whether you're in tune or not. Okay, because your brain is comparing two notes, and so they really, really improve intonation. Okay, so I really recommend. And there's a book 1 and 2 of melodious double stops, and so that's something. Okay, everybody has scale books, but I like this scale book. Okay. Can you see?
Lower.
A little lower. Little
there. Progressive scales for violin.
There we go. I can't see. My box for me is so tiny. I can't see whether I'm holding it up. But anyway, the reason I like this book is because I think that a lot of scale books, they try to pack as many scales on one page as possible, and it's very daunting. Okay. This is very nicely laid out. I mean, it's just like, that's not too scary. It's just like its own 2 pages for each scale, and they're laid out in a very logical way. And you can 1 octaves, and then 2 octaves, and then going to 3 octaves. So I really, really like this book. Okay. I have lots of scary scale books, and I hardly ever crack. And then this is a book that is fun if you do want to try your hand at fiddle tunes or fiddle improvisation. Okay. Can you see?
Yep.
Okay. Because it helps you play around in each key, and it has what we call fiddle licks, where little phrases that come up a lot in fiddle tunes and when you're improvising, and it helps you to get comfortable doing that in each key. And it shows you, if you see this chord, like if this is the chord they're playing, here's some stuff you can play that will go with that chord progression. So that's a good book for that. And if you are lucky enough to have a family member who also plays an instrument, it might be fun to try playing some duets together while you're at home. I drove by, I was driving down the street the other day, and there was a family who plays music, and they were out on their porch just playing for people who walked by, and I thought, well, that's a lovely idea, so be creative and figure out different things you can do with your instrument. The worst thing you could do right now is say, great, I don't have an orchestra, or I don't have lessons right now, so I'll just put that violin away under my bed and forget about it. That's the worst thing you can do right now, because you'll be that much better at your instrument when you go back, and even have some new things that you're excited about playing or doing. One other suggestion: if you feel as though you are weak at reading music, you might want to do flashcards. Okay, these are just like somebody can help you out. They show you this, you say what it is and how you would play it. Okay, so flashcards. I mean, you might have some of these. You can order them online. There's even make your own flashcards on a site, and that would be a good thing you could do to strengthen your note reading. And also that goes for music theory in general. If you are kind of feel like you're weak in music theory, you don't quite understand what your teacher is talking about, again, you might want to order a book on simple music theory and just start working away at that, so that you have a better understanding of music in general when everything goes back to normal.
Hopefully soon.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have any other questions for me?
No, this was fantastic. So much information. Thank you so much. So I know all gigs have pretty much been canceled at this point, but anything you want to plug, maybe website for your groups or anything like that?
Well, sure. One of my bands is Blackwater. We're a Celtic band, and our website is www.blackwatermusic.com. We had a whole bunch of stuff up there. It all got canceled, but things like down the road. I mean, I'm hoping we always play at the Celtic Classic in September. Praying that happens. So that would be a good place to come hear us, and maybe we'll be able to add some things back on there as time goes by. And then I have another band, BANNALACH.com. That is another Celtic band. I have a bluegrass band, Big Valley Bluegrass.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, we are the 8th time Lehigh Valley Music Award winner for our category, and we just performed at the Lehigh Valley Music Awards. That happened in first weekend in March. Just got it. All of this, so it was a lot of fun. Also, I'm a member of the Celtic Cultural Alliance, and there's always a lot of events being planned through the Celtic Cultural Alliance. So always check their website if you have an interest in that. And as I said, I run a session at Braveheart. Anybody's welcome. If you are a string player, if you're a flute player, if you're a guitar player, maybe you have a mandolin or a ukulele.
I do have a mandolin.
you can come along and you can try playing some chords along to the tunes. You can, try picking up some tunes. It's just an informal jam session. People of all ages. Some people come and just listen. Food's pretty good. And it's a gathering. I mean, it's just a fun thing to do and to, hear live music for free. So keep that in mind. And it's very family friendly, by the way. I mean, it is a pub, but it's a restaurant, and there's lots of families that come for that. So, yeah. So, anyway, so thank you so much.
Great. Thank you for spending some time with us.
Yeah.